and lo and behold, fresh, cold air. Moose's quarters would be a room next to the brig with 3 MPs.
Uh-oh.
And the bunks were single cots on each side of the room. Moose was given a United States automatic .45 and a billy club. He learned how to pull the weapon with one hand only, jerk a shell into the chamber, and cock the weapon with one hand. The prisoners were in the brig with incidents ranging from stealing, fighting, or causing injury with a switchblade. Most incidents involved dice or card games. MP duty hours were 8 hours on, 8 hours off. Moose enjoyed the 1-hour exercise period most of all, every 4 hours in the outside screened-in area. He did crack a surly prisoner on the side of the head for directing dirty comments towards his mother, and he got respect and no further trouble from that on. Moose drank coffee with double sugar to kill the diesel taste. He had never drank a cup of coffee in his life before that moment. The troops landed in Bremerhaven, and the first thing Moose did was drink a whole gallon of milk in Port Ness Hall. The night leg of the trip was by train to band headquarters in Orleans, France, a town south of Paris, and famous in its history as the home of Joan of Arc. Moose was delivered to the front gates of a magnificent old French army caserne. The MPs at the gates checked his papers and directed him to a long building on the left. A matching building was on the right. A cobblestone road circled each building, and opposite the gate entrance on the west of the wide cobblestone road was a magnificent, huge building. It was the head of the French Operations Center, the head of the very famous General McCulloch, the one that said nuts to the Germans when they surrounded him. The headquarters band occupied the whole top floor of the left building, and the roofs were covered with curved tile and huge skylight glass windows that were spaced every 6 feet. The skylights were hinged and could be opened if desired for air circulation. Moose entered a huge room and was a little surprised at what awaited him. About 7 guys were sitting around playing poker. Moose glanced over at one of the 7-foot lockers that lined the wall. Someone apparently was locked inside the locker and was banging, yelling, and pleading to get out. A card player glanced up and said, "Don't mind that noise, that's Orgy Dorgy, our bass horn player. It's our punishment for him for screwing us up for the last 2 weeks." It seems Orgy, who wears a 1/4 inch glasses, didn't recognize the 4 stars on the flag of the general's car and failed to salute. The driver stopped and he took his name, and he and his fellow band members were quarantined to base for 2 weeks. They also had to practice saluting twice a day for 2 hours. We decided confinement in the quarters was not enough punishment. Someone let him out. I'm tired of his needless whining. Orgy stepped out of the locker. He was a short, stocky, with a round face surrounded by 2 big eyes, greatly magnified by a pair of thick horn-rimmed glasses. A handsome, blond, and well-tanned young man stepped up to the Moose and stuck out his hand. "Hi, y'all. My name is Larry, and I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I'm your roommate, and I'll show you where to dump your gear. Y'all need to hot-foot it down to the hall to the warrants officer's office right away. He's anxious to see you." Moose dumped his bag. He went down the hall, and he knocked on the office door. Moose entered. He stopped and stood at attention and saluted. "Private Myers reporting for duty, sir." The warrant officer grinned. "Sit down and knock off the sir crap. We're not formal inside our band quarters. First of all, your papers say you're from Watertown, South Dakota. Do you know Elmer Carey?" Yes. He was my band director." A smile broke from ear to ear on the warrant officer's face. "Damn. His son and I were hell-raising and drinking buddies. I'm from Watertown, South Dakota also." Moose stood totally confounded. Would wonders never cease? Parlez-vous français? One of the band members invited Moose to go with him to the most popular nightclub in Orleans, the Trianon. The club was fantastic, and the band was accented by a lead accordion, and most of the dances were waltzes or pasodobles. Both dances involved intricate small steps and twirls that required balanced technique. South Dakota, the land of polkas, waltzes, and two-steps, delivered a Moose who was about to learn every type of dance played in the French continent. Moose's band buddy spoke fluent French. He quickly found two good-looking chicks and invited them to be a foursome. All Moose could do was dance and smile. He couldn't understand a word that was spoken that evening. It was 2:00 a.m. and the club was closing. The headquarters gate closed at 12, and Moose was really worried. Not to fear, Moose's band buddy whispered, "Your date wants her to come home with her." The couple left, and Moose followed his date to a third-floor apartment about 6 blocks from the Trianon. Moose's date's name was Bridget, and he was surprised to see another Bridget's roommate greet them at the door. "Mr. Moose," she said in French, "this is my roommate, Jeanette." Moose shook her hand, and Jeanette looked at Bridget. She said, "Can he speak French?" "Not a word," giggled Bridget. "I hope he's a John with money. The rent is due Monday. Good night." Jeanette blew a kiss and closed the bedroom door. Bridget brought out a plate of bread, cheese, fruit, and glass of wine. She smiled, and she watched Moose wolf down his snack. And she put the glass and plate to the sink and sat down on the couch and looked Moose in the eyes. In French, she said, "We need to settle on a price and pay in advance before we go to bed. A whole evening will be 2,000 francs. She tried to explain the proposition from several different approaches, but to no avail. She tried pantomime. She reviewed everything, pointing to his and her private body parts, and he still had no idea what she was talking about. She finally showed him her registration card, and French hookers carried cards and were afforded medical attention by the government in order to curb sexually transmitted diseases. Moose thought her driver's license picture was good. Bridget threw her hands up in exasperated disgust. She went to her bedroom, threw out a pillow and blanket, and slammed the door. Moose got up at 7 a.m., and he got back to the headquarters chow hall in time for breakfast, and all the guys were waiting when Moose entered the band room. They cheered and patted him on the back and pounded him on both arms. The word had spread. Moose was a stud. Moose shook his head. He'd only been there 2 weeks, and he couldn't believe his buddies were so glad to see him after an absence of only one night. He loved that outfit. Army band is tough. Moose received word from the company clerk at 7 a.m. next morning to watch the morning regular activity from upstairs. Each morning, the band would march out to a white rock-covered square in the middle of the circular cobblestone road. The band faced the headquarters building. The drum major faced the band, and he directed 3 or 4 marches. The plus side of the morning concert for the band members, there was a multitude of young, good-looking French chicks who walked across the lawn to their office job each morning. Most ladies added a little more bump and grind to their high heels walk. Everybody in the band memorized their music so they wouldn't miss a thing that morning. Exactly at 8 o'clock, the general's car entered the gate and it pulled around in front of the headquarters. The drum major stopped the band. He turned around. He twirled his long baton to a perpendicular salute at his side. The general would then whip a quick salute, go in the building, and appear on the second-floor balconies. The drum major would then direct the band playing an Irish number, either a jig or well-known St. Patrick's Day number. The general saluted at the end of the number. He would go inside and he'd call the warrant officers and say, "Goddamn good band this morning." And he said, "Keep up the good work." This was a normal routine Monday through Friday. Trumpet players were required to play taps by a pool surrounded by flowers and reveille on the East End. Other outside events including playing at nearby Army bases and passes and reviews and special ceremonies. The whack base was the favorite parade visit. The band practiced marches while playing at a large railroad yard each week. French railroad workers, many with wine bottles in their back pockets, would imitate the drill at the end of the yard, tooting on combs in their thumbs. Moose never could figure out what the imitators really did for work, since they always seemed to be sitting around eating cheese and drinking and eating bread and swigging wine. The band practiced new numbers each week and had 90% of all weekends off. No one was excused for major holidays, 4th of July, Bastille Day, European Invasion days, and the rest of the time was free time. Time to swim, play cards, or visit the local bistros. The warrant officer called Moose in his office. We spent 5 hours reliving his Watertown days, and they talked about everyone they each knew, and Moose brought him up to date on the ones he didn't know. Moose, my drum major, is being shipped back to the States, and I want you to memorize all that he does and take over. You'll be a temporary sergeant with no duties and no raise in pay. I'm just finishing my second 3-year hitch, and I won't be here long. My wife is French, and I've stayed here for her sake. Moose spent a lot of time at the pool with Larry, his buddy from Birmingham, and Larry was 5 foot tall and proved to be an accomplished high diver with a portfolio of astounding acrobatic dives. Larry tolerated the Army. He slid from the top of his bed covers and slid out when he got out so he wouldn't have to remake his bed each morning. He was in love with a French girl named Chris, who quickly claimed Moose as her big brother. Moose practiced the baton salute for hours. Even the general was impressed. The life of Riley. Moose loved Army band life. The early morning welcome to the general with marches and Irish ditties was a joy. He played his E-flat clarinet when the band did reviews and ceremonies of nearby bases. The band dressed in full parade gear with chrome helmets for special occasions such as Bastille Day or the 4th of July. The parade participants would assemble on the side of the streets facing the Champs-Élysées major street, and the French Drum and Bugle Corps led the parade. The sounds that they made sounded like and was not very exciting at all. French troops, veterans, underground heroes, and city dignitaries followed the Corps. The French communists made a point to attend these affairs in number. They did not like American troops in France. They booed, they jeered, and they hassled, and they sometimes tossed items at the passing Americans. The American segment of the parade was kicked off by the headquarters band, followed by troops both male and female, and they marched to the step of the fall blast drum section. When the Arc of Triumph came into view, the drum major signaled, the drums rolled, and the Stars and Stripes match blasted the buildings that lined the streets and echoed, bum, bum, ba-dum-bum, and the French horns and basses resounded. The piccolo solo